Wang Yibo sat quietly in the dimly lit dressing room, staring at his reflection in the mirror as the muffled sounds of thousands of screaming fans echoed from the stadium outside. Years of non-stop training, grueling schedules, and intense public scrutiny had finally taken a heavy toll on his physical and mental well-being. The heavy door creaked open slowly, and his longtime manager stepped inside, holding a thick stack of promotional contracts and a tablet flashing with endless notifications about upcoming brand endorsements. Without turning around, Yibo raised a single hand to gently halt his manager, his voice unusually soft yet carrying a weight that commanded immediate silence in the room. "Put them down," Yibo said, his eyes never leaving his own reflection, where the exhaustion of a decade in the limelight was deeply etched into his features. His manager hesitated, sensing a profound shift in the air that felt entirely different from the usual pre-show nerves or fatigue they had navigated together. "Yibo, we need to review these schedules before you go on stage tonight. The network executives are waiting for your final signature on the renewal papers," his manager urged cautiously. Instead of answering, Yibo reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn-out flash drive containing files he had carefully guarded for months away from prying eyes. He placed the drive gently on the wooden vanity table, sliding it across the surface until it came to a rest right beside his phone, which was buzzing incessantly. "Everything they think they know about me, every narrative, every manufactured scandal, every scripted smile, ends tonight when I walk out onto that stage," Yibo whispered firmly. His manager stared at the flash drive with sudden dread, realizing that the quiet young man he thought he knew completely was about to make a choice that would shock the industry. "You cannot be serious. Breaking your contract like this will ruin everything we have spent years building together in the entertainment industry," his manager warned, voice rising in panic. "We built nothing, they built a cage, and I simply performed inside it while they profited from every single drop of sweat and blood I gave," Yibo replied calmly. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, counting down the final minutes before the grand concert opener that was broadcast live to tens of millions of viewers across China. Outside, the roar of the crowd swelled into a deafening wave as the opening chords of his hit song reverberated through the concrete walls of the massive stadium. Yibo stood up slowly, adjusting the collar of his jacket with meticulous precision, looking every bit the superstar the public adored, yet harboring a secret revolution within. "Go tell them I am ready," Yibo instructed, offering a faint, melancholic smile that completely unsettled his manager before walking out toward the backstage tunnel. As he stepped into the blinding lights of the arena, the screams of the fans reached a fever pitch, creating a wall of sound that vibrated straight through the floorboards. He walked to the center of the stage, the massive LED screens projecting his face to every corner of the stadium and across thousands of online streaming platforms simultaneously. Instead of launching into the heavily choreographed dance routine that the production crew had rehearsed 100 times, Yibo stood completely still with the microphone in hand. The backing track played on for a few seconds before the bewildered sound engineer abruptly cut the music, plunging the massive venue into a tense, breathless silence. Millions of viewers watching the live stream tilted their heads in confusion, wondering why their idol had frozen in place right at the start of the highly anticipated performance. Yibo brought the microphone close to his lips, his voice echoing clearly through the high-powered speakers and straight into the hearts of everyone listening nationwide. "Tonight, I am not here to entertain you with illusions," Yibo began, his tone steady, clear, and devoid of the usual media training polish. "For 10 years, I have lived a life dictated by contracts, public relations teams, and invisible handlers who decided what I could say, feel, and love," he confessed openly. A collective gasp rippled through the front rows of the audience, while backstage, directors and producers scrambled frantically, shouting orders to cut the live broadcast feed. But it was already too late. The signal had been automatically mirrored and backed up by independent servers, bypassing the network's emergency kill switch entirely. Every trending topic, every fabricated rivalry, and every forced apology was carefully orchestrated to keep your eyes fixed on the screen and your wallets open, Yibo revealed. The chat rooms on social media platforms exploded into absolute chaos, with millions of comments scrolling past at lightning speed as fans tried to process the shocking words. His management team rushed toward the master control room, desperately trying to yank power cords and shut down the transmission towers feeding the national broadcast network. Yet, the stream held steady, broadcasted through a decentralized protocol that Yibo had secretly set up hours before stepping foot inside the arena dressing room. "They told me that if I ever spoke the truth, my career would be destroyed and my name would be permanently erased from the history of Chinese entertainment, Yibo continued bravely. Tears welled up in the eyes of hardcore fans in the stadium, many of whom suddenly understood the profound loneliness hidden behind his dazzling public persona. Let them erase it. A legacy built on lies is nothing more than a prison disguised as a palace, and I refuse to live another day behind those golden bars, he declared. He reached down to his ear, unclipped the professional in-ear monitor that connected him to the frantic producers backstage, and tossed it carelessly onto the stage floor. The metallic clatter of the earpiece hitting the wood was amplified by the microphone, sounding like a gunshot in the tense atmosphere of the packed stadium. To the media corporations that trade in human dignity for advertising revenue, and to the algorithms that feed on our silence, my time as your product is officially over, Yibo stated. He pulled the flash drive from his pocket one last time, holding it up high for the cameras to capture in ultra-high definition before dropping it onto the stage. Inside this drive are the unedited documents, financial records, and contract clauses that prove every single corruption scandal you were never meant to see, Yibo explained. The revelation sent a shockwave through the corporate towers of Beijing and Shanghai, where executives suddenly realized their darkest secrets were now exposed to the public. Download it, share it, investigate it, do whatever you must do with it, because the truth can no longer be hidden behind NDAs and paid silences, Yibo urged the internet. He took one final look around the massive arena, absorbing the lights, the faces of his fans, and the heavy weight of the past decade all at once. Thank you to the genuine fans who loved the real person behind the mask. I will miss your warmth, but I will never regret finding my freedom, Yibo said softly. Without looking back, Wang Yibo turned his back on the cameras, dropped his microphone onto the stage floor, and walked steadily toward the shadows of the backstage exit. The stadium remained frozen in stunned silence for several seconds before an overwhelming roar of mixed shock, grief, and fierce admiration erupted from the crowd. Online, the Chinese internet crashed within minutes as hundreds of millions of users flooded platforms to search for his name, share the stream, and download the leaked files. Hashtags dedicated to his final words began trending at unprecedented rates, shattering previous engagement records and bypassing national content filters through sheer volume. Industry insiders panicked as whistleblowers from other talent agencies began stepping forward online, inspired by Yibo's unprecedented act of defiance against the system. Backstage, security guards tried to block his path, but the sheer aura of his determination caused them to step aside and let him pass without a single word. He walked out of the back exit of the stadium into the cool night air, where a simple black car was waiting with its engine running quietly in the dark. Opening the door, Yibo took one last deep breath of the unfiltered night air, feeling the immense burden of his superstar identity finally lift from his shoulders. As the car drove away into the sprawling horizon of the city, the Chinese internet burned with debate, forever changed by a single artist who chose truth over fame. Miles away from the chaotic stadium and the flashing neon lights of the city center, the black car sped smoothly along the empty coastal highway, the rhythmic sound of crashing waves filling the quiet interior. Wang Yibo leaned his head back against the leather seat, closing his eyes as the fierce adrenaline of his unprecedented exit slowly faded into a profound, grounding sense of peace. For the first time in over 10 years, his phone remained entirely silent, devoid of the frantic, buzzing demands of managers, brand directors, and network producers. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the sleek smartphone that had once served as his digital leash, and watched the battery icon flicker before powering it down completely. Throwing the powered-off device onto the empty passenger seat next to him, he smiled faintly, knowing that no algorithm could track him anymore. Back in Beijing and Shanghai, emergency boardrooms were burning the midnight oil as corporate executives scrambled to contain the PR catastrophe triggered by his live broadcast. Legal teams worked frantically to draft statements, labeling the broadcast as the result of a severe mental breakdown or a sophisticated hacking attack on the stadium's audio systems. However, their desperate spin doctoring failed miserably because independent tech communities had already mirrored the decentralized data files across millions of personal devices worldwide. Data analysts, investigative journalists, and ordinary netizens began combing through the leaked financial ledgers, unearthing years of hidden embezzlement, tax evasions, and forced labor contracts. The hashtags praising his courage continued to break records, rendering internet censors completely helpless against the sheer, unstoppable tidal wave of public support. Rival celebrities and trainees, long silenced by the iron fist rules of the entertainment conglomerates, watched the unfolding events with a mixture of awe and nervous anticipation. Some industry veterans whispered that Yibo's courageous stand had permanently fractured the monopolistic grip that talent agencies held over the Chinese pop culture landscape. As the car continued its journey further away from the urban sprawl, the towering skyscrapers gave way to quiet, mist-covered mountains and peaceful rural landscapes. The driver glanced nervously through the rearview mirror, breaking the long silence to check on the man who had just dismantled his entire glittering career in a single evening. "Where should we head next, Yibo? The safe house in the province is ready, but reporters might already be staking out the major highways," the driver asked cautiously. "Take the old mountain pass," Yibo replied calmly, his voice steady and relaxed. "No one will think to look for me where the signal doesn't reach." The car veered smoothly onto a narrow, winding road that climbed higher into the dense pine forests, far away from the prying eyes of paparazzi and tabloid journalists. Outside the window, the digital billboards of the city were replaced by the soft, natural glow of the moon filtering through the thick canopy of trees. Yibo rolled down his window just an inch, letting the crisp, cool mountain air fill the car, a stark contrast to the stifling, makeup-heavy environment of dressing rooms. He remembered the exact day he was scouted as a teenager, full of starry-eyed dreams about dancing on global stages and sharing his passion for art with the world. Back then, nobody had warned him about the invisible chains that came attached to the fame, turning a joyful passion into a rigid, soul-crushing corporate product. They had tried to mold him into an obedient doll who smiled on command, never spoke his true thoughts, and surrendered every ounce of his private life to public consumption. Yet, despite all their attempts to control him, the fiery spirit that had first driven him to learn street dance in his youth had refused to be extinguished. That very spirit was what fueled his final, defiant monologue on stage, a message not just for himself, but for anyone trapped behind the golden cages of modern society. Arriving at the secluded cabin nestled deep within the mountain pass, the car came to a gentle halt beneath the rustling branches of ancient pine trees. Yibo stepped out of the vehicle, his boots crunching softly on the gravel pathway as he inhaled deeply, savoring the absolute quiet of the wilderness. He walked up the wooden steps of the cabin, unlocked the heavy front door, and stepped inside a modest room illuminated only by the warm glow of a small hearth. There were no cameras here, no teleprompters dictating his expressions, and no contracts demanding his soul in exchange for fleeting commercial success. He walked over to a small wooden desk by the window, placed his jacket over the back of a chair, and looked out at the vast, star-filled night sky above. Across the nation, millions of young people were still debating his words, sparking a cultural awakening that would reshape the entertainment industry for generations to come. The truth was finally out in the open, stripped of all corporate polish, and no amount of PR spin could ever put the genie back into the bottle. Wang Yibo poured himself a simple cup of warm tea, listening to the gentle crackle of the fireplace as he realized his true life was only just beginning.